I don't even use my Harley. Take my glasses off.
Right.
That's up. We really needed to give it. But the risk would be the ordinance is passed.
Right. On the ordinance. Right. There's no,
We can't give anything.
I have a picture of that. And somebody else come and say,
But it's not.
oh, rather simple.
Yeah. It's very simple process.
At the top, you find out that you have people.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the February 1st meeting of the Lexington City Council. Happy February to everyone, and thank you for all the folks in attendance here this evening. Before I call the meeting to order, we request that anyone who wants to give, wishing to address council and public comments are always welcome, but we ask that you sign up prior to our meeting if you can. You will be recognized during the citizens' remarks section of the council's agenda. At which time during this agenda item number 8, you will be recognized, and I ask that the following guidelines be followed. At that time, ask that you stand at the podium, and for the record, please state your name and if you are a resident of Lexington, Virginia. And if you want to be contacted, please provide your contact information with the clerk. Make your comments to the council as a whole. Please be brief and state your position and provide facts. Ask that you provide written statements and or supporting materials to the clerk for distribution to City Council and the manager. Debate is prohibited. We're here to hear you and your comments, and we typically don't respond in this forum. But and finally, we ask that you speak clearly as we want to hear what you have to say. Council will try to hear everyone who wishes to speak on a subject, and discussion will be limited to 3 minutes per individual. Time cannot be transferred to another speaker. If you represent a group, you may wish to identify the other members of your group who are in attendance, and groups are limited to 5 minutes. I remind us all that the meetings of the City Council are formal proceedings and recorded on audio tape. And with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Again, welcome and glad you're here, and ask that you all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item is consideration of the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes or modifications to the agenda. And we'll remind everyone, we do have a closed session this evening, targeting 8:30, as we will be trying to meet with our search advisor with Baker Tilly. With that, I'd like to move directly into public hearings. And the first item is public hearing and review of a possible location for a dog park. And I'd call on City Manager for introduction of this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we reviewed this very briefly at our last meeting, and I will just indicate that, of course, a dog park has been discussed for a number of years in the community prior to my arrival. And since then, there's been individuals commenting that it would be a nice thing to have here in the city. It is not, of course, a priority of the city councils at this point in time. It's not on the CIP, but given that comments have come up from time to time, staff and I, through the input of others, have looked at different sites. And one of the sites recently that we looked at was the site between McCorkle and the bypass. It's currently not used for anything. It's city property. It's mowed, maintained, and it would potentially have a possibility for that type of a use. Staff has looked at it, laid out some areas that could be used for a dog park. Seems like it would be sufficient. Would it be everything anybody would want in a dog park? Possibly not. There are many facilities that we have that are not everything everyone would like. So all we can do sometimes is to just do what is possible. As I looked at the property myself and then talking with staff, it also becomes somewhat apparent that it could be not just a dog park. It could be a little park there, a linear park. You know, if you look at the perimeter, you could put a walking path around it of some distance. There's room for perhaps a small playground, basketball court, other things. Landscape it somewhat so you could separate that area from the, at least visually, somewhat sound wise as well, from the bypass, and make it a little more appealing for everyone in the neighborhood and for our community. And in that case, it would provide some recreational opportunities, some green space opportunities for people who live in that neighborhood across the bypass. So that was sort of the vision that I just wanted to bring to you conceptually. Obviously, if there is an interest and you would direct staff to move forward in any fashion, this project, like any other project, would have to go on the investment plan or improvement plan, the capital improvement plan. And it would have to compete there for funding with every other project from the standpoint of, are there funds available and does it become a priority? So tonight basically is just, from my perspective, an opportunity for you to give myself and staff feedback as to whether or not it's worth pursuing or not. And of course, you have the public here to inform all of us whether or not they think it's a good idea and what some of the concerns they have are. So the only recommendation I have is, when you get an opportunity, let me know what you think. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll remind, we took this presentation from city staff, and Thomas, thank you for being here to point out any details that may be necessary. But as the city manager said, an opportunity tonight, we're just here to get feedback from the community on this particular site and your thoughts and opinions on what this looks like, to help council come to a decision whether to pursue it or not. And even if, council will take it up, not tonight, but at a future meeting, I would anticipate, depending upon the feedback this evening. But with that, Jim, if you can grab the sheet for who has signed up. Thank you, sir. The first person signed up to hear from is Patsy Plogger. Ms. Plogger, if you please come forward. And Clarence, you're signed up behind her, if you'd like to speak. Yes, ma'am.
That would be directly in front of my house. When I open my front door, that's what I would see. Would you want that in front of your house? Any of you? I don't think so. It's a dangerous road. Dogs have gotten killed. Cats have gotten killed. Lots of things have gotten killed on that road. And as far as I'm concerned, I do not want nothing like that in front of my house. Anybody here wants it? Put it in front of your house. That's all I have to say. I do not want nothing like that in front of my house.
Thank you, Ms.
In
Plogger.
front of yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Plogger, did you want to speak this evening? If you could, we record these for some folks that may watch it later, so.
I don't know who came up with these bright ideas, but I've lived on this hill in the same house over 60 years. The city has never made any effort to come over there and help fix up any kind of drainage systems, your curb and gutter, anything like that, but you see it everywhere else all over town. Now, we've taken care of everything on that hill, that all of our citizens that live on that hill have dressed the place up and kept it neat and try to keep it quiet. But we don't want to be hearing a bunch of dogs barking and doors slamming and trucks running up and down the road. You've got the rescue squad and all of them come right down that street to go get gasoline over city shop, the fire department. You got Randy Hostetter's vehicles running that road. And it's just not room for that much traffic on that road right there. And besides Randy Hostetter, you get all this other commotion going on all the time. And it's just not, it's not feasible to have anything like that in that neighborhood. And we just don't really want to be looking out our door at a dog park when you get up in the morning and look out the door in the front.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Plogger. Thank you for being with us this evening. Next on the list is Mike and Carol Tolley. Well, one or both?
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Mike Tolley, I live over on McCorkle Drive, right down from Patsy and them. Been there 30-some years. And I think a dog park is a wonderful idea. Wrong place. Love dogs. We've always had dogs. We've got a little yippy dog now. And I imagine a dog park as being, when I close my eyes, think about it, nice place with trees and secluded and quiet, and you know, dogs running and yipping. And I just don't see it between two busy roads, you know, even with 6 or 8 foot tall fence. It's just, to me, doesn't seem like a good place. And then here our little yippy dog would hear everything and be announcing everybody that comes and goes, and nothing wrong with that. But I just think could be other places, whether it be part of Brubaker Field or down at Jordan's Point, or maybe other places. But I just think, you know, it doesn't have, I mean, you'd have to do a lot of infrastructure, build, put trees and lots of different things to make it really suitable and quiet as I envision a dog park should be. So great idea. It's just, I don't think it's the right location. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolley. Appreciate you being here as well. Debbie Funkhauser. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Debbie Funkhauser. I live at 625 South Main, and I am the owner of a 4-year-old spoiled pug, Wally, who would love to have a dog park. I think of myself as a positive thinking, possibility-driven Pollyanna. I don't like to be a naysayer. Nevertheless, the short version of my comments tonight is dog park, yay. Location, nay. The suggestion that the city-owned parcel between the bypass and McCorkle Drive is a good location for a dog park strikes me as an effort to fit a square peg into a round hole. I know the city knows where the dogs in this town live by virtue of the dog license database. I have a hard time imagining that a large number of dogs live on the McCorkle Drive side of the bypass, and I will be surprised, I'm not surprised, that the residents of that neighborhood are not clamoring for a dog park. I spent time visiting today, probably parked in front of your house, and this is what I observed. The mountains are beautiful. The area is also windswept and sun exposed. The bypass traffic is a distraction. Only those who live east of the bypass can walk to the proposed site. I could not shake the image of a dog and its owner being hit by a car while attempting to cross the bypass from the neighborhood across the way. There's fairly heavy traffic on McCorkle Drive. Most of it seems to be exceeding the posted speed limit over a blind hill and appeared to be driving through rather than to that neighborhood. Access to McCorkle is limited to 2 entry points, and both are inadequate. The turn from Route 60 east onto the Quarry McCorkle Drive at Taco Bell is hazardous and will be more so when the new hotel is occupied. The traffic configuration at Barger Quarry Flower Lane is chaotic. At the other end of McCorkle Drive, the entry from North Main crossing the bypass is one of the wonkiest I've seen, especially when leaving Campbell Lane back towards downtown. On the other hand, I looked at other spaces which seemed to fit the need better. I admit that I was not involved in the earlier effort to do a dog park, and I don't know why these other sites were rejected. Brubaker Field is heavily used as a recreation area by all ages, has parking and restroom facilities. Today, I witnessed dog owners using it as an off-leash park. Public Works already provides maintenance services. The city owns a huge swath of land adjacent to Waddell School and the Wood Creek Trail, which has a new friends group. The dog park needs friends. Jordan Point is another designated recreation area with parking and restrooms. I ask if non-city owned land could be considered in partnership. For example, use of the extensive grounds around Carilion Hospital might support the objective of nurturing a healthy community and is near to proposed Spotswood project. The residents of nearby Oak Grove would not protest. Maybe a Carilion Community Foundation grant could be leveraged. My understanding is that dog parks are most successful when they take advantage of spaces where people already are. My understanding is that the comprehensive plan articulated a goal of creating a healthy, more active, walkable city. I don't think the suggested dog park best promotes that vision. I do see the orphaned parcel of land between McCorkle Drive and the bypass as a green corridor, which could support wildlife, offset carbon emissions, and which eventually could host a walking path once a better connection to the rest of Lexington is achieved via pedestrian overpass. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Next speaker is Tara Rhodey. And if there's anyone else who intends to speak this evening, I'd be glad to hear you.
Good evening. I'm Tara with the Rockbridge SPCA, not a citizen in Lexington, but I wanted to speak of some things that you probably haven't thought of or things that we experience all the time at the shelter. If you've ever been to the SPCA and drove into our driveway, you might notice our dog kennels and exercise areas all have 8-foot fences. 2 reasons for that. So the dogs can't jump out. I think I saw the last proposal, there was going to be a 5-foot fence as opposed to a 48-inch fence. So that's better. Dogs can't jump over a 40 or a 5-foot fence, but the 8-foot is so people don't drop their animals in our kennels and abandon them there. We also lock our gates every night. One night we forgot to lock our gates and somebody came in with a dog, found the gate open, put their dog in there and shut it and left. It also happened to be torrential downpour storm that night and that dog stayed in that kennel all night in the rain. Just 2 days ago, somebody while we were there drove in at 8:15 in the morning and tied a little dog to our pole by our parking lot for the employees. So you have to think of, can somebody abandon a dog in the park? It needs to be able to lock and the fences need to be high enough so they can't place or set an animal over the fence. If they can, they will. We see it all the time at the shelter. Also something to consider would be keeping little dogs in another section, 30-pound dogs and under, maybe have a safe place to be from the bigger dogs. But my biggest concern when I saw the dog park was that you're going to have a problem with animal abandonment. So I'm not against the dog park. I think it would be great. And, you know, let the folks of Lexington figure out where the best location is. But that's my biggest concern. Dogs dropped in the Lexington's park will be charged to Lexington when they come to the SPCA. Thank you.
Yeah. Tara, thanks for being with us and thanks for your service at the SPCA. Miss Jeannie, come on down.
I'm Jeannie Vaness, and I've been living on McCorkle Drive for 45 years. And when we first moved there, it was a child-friendly neighborhood, and all of our children have gone. Now it's a neighborhood with a lot of elderly people. I'll read part of a memo that I sent to City Council for the people that aren't aware of my thoughts on the dog park. I'm in favor of a dog park, but not where it's going to be located. No longer can we enjoy the peacefulness it once was on our street. It has turned into a speedway. The building of Stonewall Square and fast food franchises have a great impact on our street. Vehicles wishing to avoid traffic clogging delays from Route 11 onto Nelson Street near Sheets can gain faster access to Midland Trail and choose to go down McCorkle Drive. Additionally, trucks delivering gravel or concrete, bargers and Hosteters use this street to get to VMI and also back onto Route 11. At times when the interstate is closed because of an accident, some of the trucks will come up McCorkle Drive because they don't want to make that turn to get onto 11. So we have that. And of course, you know, we know that the city maintenance trucks are up and down there often during the day and evening, as well as first aid and fire department. And I wonder about I don't think that putting a dog park at Jordan's Point is a very good idea, because I used to go down there and read, and a lot of people bring their dogs and take them off leash, and they do not pick up after their dogs. I mean, you just don't know where your foot's going to step into if you're not looking down. When you have dogs together in a dog park, there's a probability of dogs fighting and causing injury to each other or to the owners. Let's see. Dog parks contaminate the land and are breeding grounds for parasites. Bacteria found in drinking water and puddles, parvovirus, heartworms, and canine influence, because not all dogs are vaccinated. And there's a slope there on that land, and that what washes down from the dog park that goes into the drainage ditch that goes on down and comes out there at the Jordan's Point. That's our drinking water. You know, and we need to think about that also, because of that slope and that drainage ditch. Where is it going to go? It's going to go down to the river. And we have a hard enough time with our drinking water as it is. When it's inspected, they always find something, and there's always someone unhappy with what they have. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Jeannie, thank you for being with us and sharing those details. Your email was received by all of council, as well as Tammy McComas and Ms. Plogger and the neighborhood petition. And all of those will be part of the minutes associated with this. And we appreciate your taking the time to be with us this evening and let us know how you feel about the idea. Are there any others that would like to speak to this topic this evening? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Again, I'll remind you that there's no decision being made this evening, and the idea is just that, it's an idea. And if and we hear you loud and clear on, I think it was a resounding, not the right location, and certainly not what you'd like to see in your front yard. If you do have ideas for what you'd like to see in your front yard or use of that property, would welcome those as we move forward and take care and join you in being better neighbors. After 60 years, the city not being the best neighbor, it sounds like from your perspective. If there are ways we can be a better neighbor, love to chat with you and learn more about those ideas from that standpoint.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we have some discussion about the
Sure.
dog park?
Yeah, I feel like we
council?
definitely owe it to the public, and the whole concept of making a decision at a later date might lead the public on to think we might make a decision when you're not here and you're not aware of when we're about to make a decision on this. And so in the interest of transparency, I would share that, I don't think this is a good location. And so I would not support a dog park in that location. Whether we make a decision tonight or in 2 weeks or a month, whatever our schedule might be, I will be opposed to this location. I'm also would love to see a dog park in the city. We do struggle with the right location. Lots of folks talk about the Fairwinds Park. That's a huge swath of land that's flat, but also there's neighbors close by. We struggle in the city, 2.5 square miles, lots of residential. We do struggle in the city for the right location to find the right size to erect a 5 or 8 foot high chain link fence. We do struggle with that. So in the interest of transparency, I wanted you to know where I stand on this. if we are not making a decision tonight.
Well, and I apologize. I shouldn't have front run. If council would like to make a decision tonight, they're welcome to do so, of course. But it wasn't the intention initially. This was just to hear from the public on their thoughts on this particular location.
Well, and I agree with everything David said, and like Jim prefaced the meeting, this has not been a council priority, a dog park overall. For me personally, we don't have a good location, so it's still not a council priority. I would be willing to have the city work with the county or any volunteers who want to locate a better location that makes sense. And I think what we've found is anywhere in a neighborhood is not really a good location, maybe convenient for some people, but as you brought up with your dog that barks when people are out front. I've had dogs most of my life, and same thing. I would hate to have a bunch of people coming and going in my front yard that the dog's not used to, because your dog's gonna be barking all day long. So I think we've heard several times now that in a neighborhood is not a good place. And for me personally, it's still not a funding priority. It'd be nice if we found the right place. So I would not like this include, and this location is not right at all. So would not like to have it in our CIP coming up.
I'll pile on. I was on council and planning commission when we did the first round of trying to find a dog park for the city. We did an extensive search. We made a lot of site visits of council and planning. Ultimately, the only site that we could find at the time, and this included looking at Brubaker, including looking at Richardson Park, included looking at Jordan's Point. So we put a lot of time and resources in trying to find the right spot, and the place that we could find consensus on was around Waddell, behind where the railroad building is. But as proposed, in the end, it still was. There are a lot of boxes you got to check to have a good dog park. One of them is location. This definitely does not check the box. Size, having vestibules so you can leash your dog before you try and get the dog out of the park. And we can talk more about what a good design is. I have a dog. I've visited a lot of dog parks, but one box you can't check definitively is the responsibility of the pet owner. And I've seen a lot of dog parks that don't have responsible pet owners. And once the irresponsible pet owners kind of take over, the responsible pet owners, the ones you want to see there, they scatter. So now you're left with a bigger problem with the dog park that nobody wants to use except for irresponsible pet owners than a dog park that is an asset to the community. I welcome further discussion and investigation into dog park in the city. I think it's good to keep those conversations going, and maybe we'll find the right spot. But at the way that we're talking right now at this location, it is a non-starter for me.
Well, like Chuck, I was on council at the time that we had the, I think it was 2012 conversations about a dog park. And I have this strong sense of neighborhoods. And I have been one, and I'm guilty of saying no to certain things that go on that the city would have been responsible for in regard to neighborhoods. And so I hear you. I feel your pain. And I know where you're coming from in regarding to making sure that the city doesn't do anything to be detrimental to any of our neighborhoods. I would love to see a dog park, but I think it's important that we find the right one, not just a dog park somewhere, anywhere. That's not going to be good for the dogs, nor the owners or the people who live in the neighborhoods, if it's in a neighborhood. Back in 2012, we did our due diligence to look at as many sites as possible, and none of them really fit. And one of the ideas Well, there were two ideas. One idea was to consider Enfield Road. Well, people didn't want to go out that far. But I thought, well, if you want to walk your dog, wouldn't you want to walk to the dog park too? But that didn't seem to go over too well. Also, we talked about a public-private partnership, and Carillion at that time was mentioned as well. But Carillion may have future plans for their land, so that could possibly be off the table. But there might be somebody else out there listening, or who might read about it in the paper, who may have a piece of land somewhere in the county that would be willing to go along with the plans for developing. But right here in the city, on any city land, we just don't have what's appropriate for everybody involved and that everybody would be happy with. And I'm not sure everybody would be happy with whatever you come up with anyway, but at least the majority would feel like we've done something fair and considering everybody's feelings about this. So we've been down this road before. We may go down this road again. We may still go down this road, but I would be one to be hesitant to vote for this particular site as well. I would not be doing the right thing for this neighborhood if I were to vote yes.
Hey, Ms. Alexander.
I would like to chime in with
Sir.
2 cents. I think the area needs a dog park. I don't think the city at this time has the place for a dog park. I think the proposed location of McCorkle Drive is not a good location. It doesn't have the walkability feature. There's too much traffic. All the things that have been said, I would agree with. And so I too would lend my support to not supporting the dog park in the location as proposed.
I think we need to go back to the drawing board on the area.
Well, thank you all for the transparency and I think it's a clear indication without a vote on what direction we're going on this particular piece of property. So, Ms. Plogger, I don't anticipate seeing anything changing out your door anytime soon. But it's out of the ordinary. But yes, ma'am, if you'd like to come, please come forward to the microphone.
Say that the city has been really good to us. I don't mean, I'm not saying, we don't want to say anything against the city.
Right.
They clean their roads and they do what they can do. It's just that they can't do a lot. But we have good city workers. I don't want nobody to
absolutely.
think that we don't think they are.
We agree with you 110%. Our public works, picking up the trash, keeping our
Do they?
Lexington PD, keeping the streets safe. Our folks do a good job.
They
But
sure do.
yeah,
Thank you.
certainly. Thank you. I always appreciate hearing feedback on our staff. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this particular topic? Ms. Plog, come on up if you like.
I know that people that eat in the restaurants and all in Lexington are taxed for the horse center. That you all support the horse center with tax dollars that we eat in restaurants and in Lexington. What would be wrong with asking the people that are in charge over the horse center? They've got wide open land out there. It'd be an ideal place to have dogs running in a place. I mean, if we're gonna pay them taxes, they certainly ought to be able to return the favor a little bit to us for paying the taxes, help them to keep them afloat. So that's my impression about that.
I was going to say, we have an election this fall, so if that's your campaign and want to sign up to come join us on council. Thank you, Mr. Plogger.
Well, point of clarification, it's a percentage of the lodging tax that goes to the horse center, not the restaurant. But I will tell you, the best dog park I saw was over in Waynesboro, where they have probably 30 acres of wide open space. And there must have been 100 dogs out there just running around and having a great time because they have so much space. Nothing was confined, and that's a good thing for a dog park. But by far the more successful dog park that I've seen. And I agree. If we could pull something like that off at the Horse Center, that would be a great opportunity. Probably worth further investigation. Thank you.
I believe after our discussions years ago about a dog park, there were some citizens who were in communication with the Horse Center about a dog park there, but I don't know what became of that idea. But
Might be good for business for them too, to get more people out to
Yeah.
the Horse Center, and could be mutually beneficial to a lot of different folks.
I think because of some changes in administration, that could have been the downfall at that point. I'm not sure, but it's worth checking into. And mentioning staff, I want to thank Thomas Wagner for putting his effort in again to accommodate, what has been requested, and we thank you.
Very good. We've closed that public hearing. We'll move on from this topic to the next 6.2, the public hearing and consideration of an amendment to the zoning ordinance to permit detached accessory dwelling units in residential zoning districts. Welcome, Arnie.
Good evening to you all. Just a quick history. Planning Commission started this last January. They made a recommendation to you in October, or forwarded a recommendation. And then in November, you held your first public hearing. A couple of issues needed to be addressed. We tried to address those quickly for a December public hearing. And then it was determined at a time you needed a little bit more time. We held a work session that was spirited. And then we made some changes in response to those comments that you had during the work session. I'm just going to hit the highlights of what was addressed, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. So the first item is C4, which is on page 5 of 18 or page 10 of 34. We just changed the reference, not the reference, but just had to point out that the minimum lot area could not just be to the zoning district, because there are several zoning districts that have 2 lot area minimums. R1, for example, has 1 family minimum lot size that is smaller than the 2 family. So we had to specify which one we wanted to point to. Then the majority is on the next page, page 6 of 18 or page 11 of 34, and item 10. That area or portion of the code was consolidated because there was a subsection 8 that was then brought down and reorganized thoroughly by Jeremy. What I'm going to just mention quickly in B as an example, the registered short-term rental may be located in either the primary dwelling or the accessory dwelling unit. That was a decision that you wanted to at least bring forward for this public hearing. And then in D, that the short-term rental unit located in accessory dwelling unit may only be utilized as a type B rental. And then further in E, that it would be limited to 45 nights. That's all I have to highlight in short-term rentals. Again, this is accessory dwelling units, not short-term rentals, but how they tie into how the two tied together. There's nothing there. Then the last section in 9, in the second public hearing, so the one in December, we had reached out because there was a question about utilities and tying into them. The Public Works Director had provided you with A, B, C, and D as standards. And then that was further refined at your at your work session, and particularly the last line requiring the system development fee and also the minimum monthly charge. So those were added to that particular section of the proposed code. That's all I have for the quick highlights. Happy answering questions.
So I don't want to take up too much of your time with this, but during the Planning Commission discussions, do you remember if all the commissioners were on board with the 2 occupancy per accessory dwelling unit? And it's not to put you on the spot if you don't remember.
No, I'll answer it this way. I don't recall the vote, but I remember also a lengthy discussion on 2 or 3. So they ended up with two, and I can't remember if it was unanimous or not, but they ended up with two for the main reason, as I recall, that it's easier to start with the conservative number, and then if we find out it's not much of an issue, then maybe we can expand it to three. But that's my main recollection from that discussion. But it could have gone either way, quite honestly. It just there were a lot of opinions on both sides.
So there were some people that felt that, you know, a small family should be able to live in an accessory dwelling unit.
I would say that just about half of them thought that three would have been the appropriate number, could have been the appropriate number.
Thank you.
Arnie, what would, if we approved it as presented tonight, that limited it to two people, what would it look like if those two individuals happen to, for example, have a child? What would fall on you from an enforcement position? I mean, what would the city look like? I mean, I know you don't want to get into how we look to the public, but what would you have to do? Evict them? I mean, and what would we do as a city council? I tell you what we would do. We would change the code right then and there. And so, you know, I can see into the future that's going to happen. And I don't really want to be sitting here or have another city council sitting here when, again, to simplify it, I'll just say two parents, maybe the expectant mom comes and talks to us to say, I'd really rather not be evicted midway through my lease. We love Lexington. We're great neighbors. And we're sitting here looking at it and saying, this could have been avoided. This is not a win for us. And so I have some apprehension looking into the future when we're presented with that first case, because I'd like to avoid you from sending that letter that says you've got 60 days or 30 days to move out. Oh, and good luck finding another place as you're trying to start a family. So I'm open to saying three, because I have a feeling we're going to get there very quickly as soon as someone asks for it.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Other members of council like to speak to this issue?
Well, we're not in discussion yet. This is questions before the
I
public
answered your
hearing.
question. You're right. I'm sorry. Liz.
Well, I just want to know. So
Respond or not?
Go ahead. Please respond to my long-winded question.
If we get a complaint, so one, is there going to be a complaint? But if there's a complaint, then I have to investigate. And we do have the ability to do an inspection, get an inspection warrant if we need to. And then, yes, it's a zoning enforcement. So then there's the nice notice of violation letter, and they have 30 days to appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So there's an appeals process for everything. So I'm not really sure that we would ever necessarily get to an eviction, but we would be putting pressure on the property owner to comply with the code. And what does that mean? Two people. If you set it at two people per that accessory dwelling unit.
Thanks, Arnie.
Any other questions for staff? Hearing none at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing on the topic of the zoning ordinance to permit detached accessory dwelling units in residential zoning districts. And I'm not aware of anyone that signed up. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this topic? Sam, you weren't here at the beginning when I gave my diatribe. Welcome. Please state your name for the record, and if you are a resident of Lexington, and if you want to be contacted, please leave your information with the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, and the council to speak this evening. I'm coming into this a little late in the game, so my comments are only for consideration only. And I appreciate your receptiveness and understanding. My subjective,
if you could just state your full name for the record.
Yes, thank you. Samuel Collins, 24 Edmondson Avenue, Lexington, Virginia.
Thank you, sir.
So my subjective comment would be that I understand the drivers for this proposal, given what I'm reading. I would just want to be sure that this is not a solution looking for a problem. We do have hotels in the area. The comment is we don't want to turn the neighborhood of Lexington into a hotel district. But given there's 150 days of the year that are eligible for short-term housing, that's about 40%. And that's about the occupancy rate of some of the hotels in this area off-season. So I don't know if any of you live across the street from one of these short-term rental areas. I do. And at times it's like living in the parking lot of Hotel 6. There are individuals who come in at 11 o'clock at night. They've been traveling, obviously, maybe coming back from a football game or a basketball game. There is noise. It's interruption. Sometimes they leave at 5:30 in the morning, packing up the cars. We've had opportunities to observe 3 to 4 cars parked in front of our residence, sometimes dually trucks from the horse center. So what does that mean? I'm not opposed to short-term residents, but there needs to be an infrastructure for accountability. And if you're providing the rules and the regulations, you also need to provide the means to enforce them. And they shouldn't be passive. There were logbooks. I would just challenge, when's the last time someone went into some of these rooms in homes and challenged the logbooks between type A and type B housing? How many bedrooms are really used? How many people are in those? And is there off-street parking? And if there is it being utilized? So again, it's all infrastructure, right? So if we want to make progress, and clearly Lexington is a good place for that, and we should be for that, along with keeping the character of what everybody loves about Lexington, we really need to provide for that underbelly of infrastructure to be sure that there's a balance. I'm not against the auxiliary housing. I think that's a good thing if it's utilized correctly. There's been some reference to the need for short-term housing for professors from WL and other places, and I do think that's an attribute that enhances Lexington itself. The number of people, I think there's a balance. I would say again, there needs to be an infrastructure to support whether it's 2 or 4 or 5 or whether there's children. People have bought into these neighborhoods and they're locked into the status quo. If you move them to a different place, and it may be an auxiliary building with a couple and 2 children, they didn't move into that neighborhood knowing that that was going to happen. So if changes are going to be made, there's a whole change management process that I would ask you to be aware of, to be sure that you bring people along with you. So there's no sharp turns, and we're here trying to undo what was meant to be a positive, good thing. Those are my comments. Thank you for considering those. Have a blessed night.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate you being with us and sharing your perspective and comments on your experience with our neighborhoods, to be sure. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during this public hearing on this item regarding accessory dwelling units? Not seeing anyone else who would like to speak to this, I'd like to close the public hearing and invite council's discussion. Mr. Betts.
So as you all know, I think the occupancy should be raised, and I'm going to give you all some reasons why. I want to spend most of my time talking about the legal reasons why, but I will open with some points prior to that. As Mr. Sigler, Councilmember Sigler mentioned earlier, Lexington is 2.5 square miles. There are limited places for housing options. These are going to be smaller square footage housing options that most likely, on average, will be more affordable based on the square footage of the dwellings. it would be unfair to exclude families from the same economic opportunity as single individuals or couples. And I'll get into some legal reasoning about that later. Additionally, Lexington's demographics generally are folks, towards their retirement years and college students. This presents an issue with workforce housing. If we do not have places for families to live, then we will have problems in the future finding people to work in our local businesses. And you may say, well, people can come from other areas and work, say lower wage jobs in Lexington. Well, why wouldn't they work those same jobs in their community? That's a question that I would pose to council. Additionally, if we do not have the ability for families to live in our area, because there's not that many places to rent right now, there's not that many places to buy right now, families don't live in the area, who's going to come and buy all these houses when they come on the market? If you have a family living in an accessory dwelling unit that's able to save some money, maybe during hard economic times, and that family's doing a little bit better later, maybe they can buy the whole property off of, let's say an older resident when they get ready to sell. So I think that's something that should be considered on an economic, version as well. And additionally, having families that are in their prime working years, spending money in their local businesses is something that I think it warrants economic consideration as well. Now I'd like to take some time to talk about the legal implications. Virginia, and the way I'm gonna handle this is I'm gonna read out the code section, and I'm gonna stop where on the portion of the code that I want to highlight, but I invite any member of council or anybody for that matter to look at these code sections, see if you agree with me or disagree with something I didn't, speak to. But, the first one I want to talk about is Virginia Code Section 36-96.1:1 definitions. Familiar status means one or more individuals who have not attained the age of 18 years being domiciled with a parent, a parent or other persons having legal custody of such individual or individuals, or two, the designee of such parent or other persons having custody within the written permission of such parent or other persons. The term familiar status also includes any person who is pregnant or is in the process of securing legal custody of any individual who has not attained the age of 18 years. For the purpose of this section, in the process of securing legal custody means having filed an appropriate petition to obtain legal custody of such minor in a court of competent jurisdiction. Now I'd like to go on to section 36-96.3, unlawful discriminatory housing practices. Section C, it shall be an unlawful discriminatory housing practice for any political jurisdiction or its employees or appointed commissions to discriminate in the application of a local land use ordinance or guidance, or in the permitting of housing developments, I-1, on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, elderliness, familial status, sources of funds, sexual orientation, gender identity, military status, or disability. I'm going to stop there. If anybody else would like to take a look at that code section and speak to anything in there, you're welcome to. This is off Virginia Fair Housing Office, Virginia Department of Professional and Occupational Regulations website. Quote, federal and state fair housing laws protects people from discrimination when trying to rent an apartment, buy a house, obtain a mortgage, or purchase homeowners insurance. Fair housing requirements apply to all housing providers, property managers, owners, landlords, real estate agents, banks, saving institutions, credit unions, insurance companies, mortgage lenders, and appraisers. The Fair Housing Board administers and enforces the fair housing law, although the Real Estate Board is responsible for fair housing cases involving real estate licensees or their employees. Each board investigates housing discrimination through the Fair Housing Office, which receives an average of 180 complaints a year. The majority of complaints involve disability and racial discrimination, while familial status complaints are on the rise. And I would just like to go through some analysis based on the way this ordinance is written and why, what my thinking is on this. Then I have one more code section I'd like to read, or a portion of it at least. And then I'd also like to point to the planning commission meeting minutes from when a discussion was taking place on this. Only allowing two people in an accessory dwelling unit is problematic based on the structure of the proposed ADU ordinance. Single individuals or couples could have the ability to rent the main structure while living in the ADU, whereas this would not be a possibility for a family. And this analysis here in this section that I'm reading currently is my own thoughts on this. This is not the law. And I'll read that again. These are my thoughts and analysis on the current laws in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Only allowing and applied to our ordinance as presented. Only allowing two people in an accessory dwelling unit is problematic based on the structure of the proposed ADU ordinance. Single individuals or couples could have the ability to rent the main structure while living in the ADU, whereas this would not be a possibility for a family. This is a concern because a family who owned a residence would not have the same property rights as a single individual or a couple who own the property with both a main structure and an ADU. Additionally, a separate issue is that a family could potentially rent on a short-term basis an ADU, while a family would be excluded from renting that same ADU on a long-term basis. This is problematic because this does not, in my opinion, have a reasonable or rational basis in terms of density outside of the unit and/or living space per person within the unit on any given day. If the space in an ADU and/or surrounding the unit allows for short-term rental to a family, then the space in the ADU would also reasonably be expected to be enough, this is my opinion, for a long-term rental. It would not be reasonable to exclude a family from a space for 365 days or more if the same space could be rented to them for a total of 45 days without issue. Now, I'd like to cite the Planning Commission meeting where some discussion on this took place. And this is out of I believe this is the agenda or the meeting packet from September 14th, 2023. And the minutes are from Thursday, August 24th, 2023 at 5 p.m. And it says, let's see here. All right. A. Glazer then requested commission review the definitions included in the ordinance, adding the building. Let's see. Okay. He asked commission to set a maximum occupancy for detached and attached ADUs. Elstrom, you know what? I'm not going to read this whole thing, but basically it points to what points to what Mr. Glazer said earlier, that this was not a unanimous decision. There were members of the Planning Commission who thought a small family should be able to live there. I don't know if 4 people came up, but this is what I would propose considering when I turn your attention to section 36-105.4, occupancy standards for residential dwelling units. The owner or managing agent of a residential dwelling unit may develop and implement occupancy standards restricting the maximum number of occupants permitted to occupancy a dwelling unit to 2 persons per bedroom, which is presumed reasonable. Again, there's more to this statute if you'd like to take a look at it, but this is how I believe this should be handled. This is a statute from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and as a Dillon's Rule state, we need to abide by state laws. So I would consider what I think a fair and a legal and probably a compromise that would work is to have 1 bedroom accessory dwelling units be 2 people. But if you have a 2-bedroom accessory dwelling unit, then you should be allowed to have 4 people in there. And I think that could be presumed reasonable. And that would be my thinking on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. Other members of council, Mr. Smith.
A quick question for related or unrelated?
So the related and unrelated, and I'd invite legal counsel to weigh in on this. If there is some other ordinance prohibiting unrelated people from living together, that would not necessarily be stricken by us doing this here. They would be read together, not separately. Would you agree with that?
Couldn't just say unrelated because you have a family issue, of course. So
So
I think you'd almost have to treat them as the same, and have to allow them to have be related and on. It's my instinct on it. I don't
So
think
you
I need
think-
to research it.
well, okay,
But I heard your position being familial,
yes. Amelia
which would,
status.
so that would be related.
Right, that would be related.
Though I will say, planning commission would loathe to define a family. that
That
you-
is a sticky wicket. If we start
Yes.
getting into that.
You could say 2 adults and a child, but David, I know you were appalled that if somebody was to have a child in there, we'd have to tell them to move out. Okay, so you allow 3 people. When they have that 4th child, do we then tell them? I mean, you pick a number. We did talk a long time in planning commission about 2 and 3 people. 4 never really gained traction. And a big part of that was because we don't allow the 4 unrelated people and 3 in some of our zoning areas to live together. So we settled on, these are supposed to, we settled on 2, and that is what the planning commission approved. 3 was 2 and a child, two adults, if we left it 2 adults and a child, possibly, but these are supposed to be subordinate structures. It is not really intended for a family to live in this structure. You would, or in both structures, that gets beyond what that would change the character of the neighborhood, and that was becoming more dense than planning commission intended with this code.
So I'll just, I'll read the rest of the planning commission meeting minutes that I wanted to go ahead and point out earlier. So, just for point of information, P. Bradley voiced strong support for allowing a small family to a residence in an ADU following discussion, and considered a number of ways to address the issue of maximum occupancy of an ADU and whether to limit the number of unrelated people to a parcel or dwelling. There was a general agreement to limit the occupancy of an ADU to 2 persons and make no change to the limit on unrelated individuals per dwelling. There was a general acknowledgement that public comment on the final draft could lead to commission to make a change to the ordinance text. So my understanding is that there were dissenting commissioners, that this was not something that seemed to be set in stone when it left planning commission, based on just the reading of the minutes. And that, from members of the public that I've spoken to, I haven't heard any issue with having, a family and an accessory dwelling unit. So, I haven't heard much public outcry about that. And I understand that, it might change things, but it's going to change things if people are doing it on a short-term basis too. I mean, if people are coming in for 45 days, and you have a different family every weekend, or you have a different, group of students or young people or older people or whoever, that those people are not going to be as tied to the community as a family living there. So I think that if we can allow people that are not tied to our community to come in, why not give people the right to rent to people that would like to be part of our community? And again, I mean, things are going to change regardless of whether we want them to or not. We're either, we can't guarantee that we're going to have people to fill the housing that currently exists in 10, 20 years. This affects people's property value. This affects who works at businesses. These things have real impact on this city. And if you look at our demographics, it's not, if you look from like 1980 to like 2000, like the early 2000s, our population dropped. And if you look at like the wonderful job that's been done in this city over the past couple of decades, rebuilding things, getting vibrant businesses in, it's because we had new people coming into the community. It's because property value stayed strong, but you need people to continue to live here. And if we're relying on people to move from out of the area only into this area to keep, property values up and to buy the houses and not have a bunch of houses go on the market and some be left vacant and end up dilapidated, you need families in here too. So I think you need a mix of people. And the problem is there's nowhere for families to go right now because most of the properties are already owned or rented out. So where are these people going to live?
Well, I will note, as you read in the planning commission meetings, that we said that after the public hearing, we would consider changing the number of people. Well, this is our second public hearing. Planning commission held one, City council has held one. I haven't heard anybody saying we need to have more than 2 people.
Have
And
you-
I go back to our original where we said that Arnie had said that we felt it was better to start more conservative, and then maybe at a later time, council could amend the.
Well,
code.
what's coming forward is the planning commission's recommendation and vote and staff's recommendation. Mr. Betts, I don't think there's anyone that does understand that you would be a proponent for a change.
Absolutely.
And I just want to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to make sure on page 5 of 18, under B for definitions, you would like to change the first sentence under attached ADU definition, intended for occupancy of not more than 4 related persons for living purposes.
I would like to change the four to 4 people. Yes, sir.
And in the following paragraph for detached, you would like to see the same change made, that not more than 4 related persons.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest that's a motion that you've made, and ask if there is a council member, if anyone would like to second that motion.
I'll second it.
Have a second?
Just to be sure, is that a motion to approve the ordinance with 4 related persons, or a motion to amend what is
A motion to amend
on the table?
what is on the table. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure if you're calling for a vote to approve the ordinance that way, or you're calling a vote to change the document, then there will be a subsequent vote to approve the ordinance.
Correct.
I think we're doing the latter.
Correct.
I want to clarify the motion that you've made and you've seconded, if there's 2 bedrooms, because now you're going against the uniform building code that limits 2 people per bedroom. And that bedroom has to be 70 square feet. I mean, if we want to split hairs, we can split hairs.
I think that's fine in 2 bedroom.
If it's 70 square feet, because I mean, if we're gonna go and start reading code, that's what a bedroom is defined as in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Uniform State Building Code.
And I mean, well, so the minimum size accessory dwelling you were talking about here is 500 square feet. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to have 2 bedrooms, but that's much larger than the 70 square feet you're talking about.
No, that's bedroom. The bedroom
And-
has to be.
I'm fine with if
That's-
the bedroom in 2 bedrooms.
I'm thinking, I'll make the suggestion that before we get too much into sausage making, that perhaps you can nail down the language and 1 bedroom versus 2 bedroom. I think the intention, I understand where you're trying to go, and there appears to be support, but before we take a vote or move forward, unless council objects, I'd like to see you go back and do the work to get the language as you want it. Much like we've seen with our friends in Richmond, you start to build something and you may not have it, your intentions are good, but the vessel that you have.
Absolutely willing to do that.
Okay.
Well, can we kind of get some idea on where everybody else is on I would like to know what everybody else is thinking on the 2, 3, and 4, and and it's related. So it's not family, it is related. And
And are you now adjusting the parking requirements? Because that could be 4 related adults, and that could be 4 additional cars. And do we, we heard from, a resident of Edmondson, parking is a big issue. Obviously, we've had our ordinance for short-term rentals for about 5 years. This ADU discussion has been going on for over a year. The Planning Commission has tried to thread the needle, talking about parking, talking about the number of people, respecting the neighbors, building setbacks. My curveball, it was a slight curve, just a little bit, was just the hypothetical of a couple having a child and what that would look like for city staff and us. And looking into the future, I could foresee us not telling them they had to move or not going through that process and them appealing to the BZA. And so that's why I said 3 people, and I'd be happy to say that that's 2 adults and 1 person under the age of 18. It doesn't have to be a new.
So what I would propose and what I would like to do is take a look at Virginia Code section 36-96.1:1 definitions, which includes familial status. Look at section 36-96.3 and on unlawful discriminatory housing practices, and also look at the code that you were referencing, section 36-105, I believe that's what you're referencing, 105.4 occupancy standards for residential dwelling units, and look at those code sections and come back with language, and I'd be happy to run it by the city attorney if that's appropriate.
I'll say run it by the city manager
City manager.
and staff before hitting the attorney, but thank you for that. To address Ms. Strawn's question, if other council members would like to speak as to their position on the proposed potential changes.
One of the things that David said about a couple, a lot of couples are not related. So you have to address the fact that there are going to be unrelated people in these dwelling units. And we have to really take a serious look at the fair housing guidelines, because we don't want to be a city government telling people to do something that is against the law because they will be cited and so will we. So I think we need to go back and make sure that our ordinance is in alignment with the fair housing guidelines.
And I will say, Ms. Alexander, I'm comfortable with what has come out of the planning commission as edited and in the packet this evening. I'm comfortable that that is consistent with Virginia fair housing law. The other things we're talking about, well, I'm happy to take a look at as Nick works through them and shares them. So
Thank you.
And it is, Arnie did a lot of research on this, and nearly all the other ordinances in Virginia, it limits it to 2 or 3 people.
and Virginia law allows you to limit the number of occupants in a dwelling. So it
does, but there are some guidelines that you're reasonably supposed to follow, correct?
oh, sure. Yeah. Reasonableness is always part of the inquiry. I agree.
I recall that the conversation and the desire to pursue ADUs was to move forward with the potential for additional housing inventory. And so I'm hopeful that we can, Planning Commission did a great and thorough 12-month plus look at it, deep dive. So I hope that we can get something that council can embrace and not get perfect necessarily, certainly legal, but not necessarily for every potential circumstance, and move forward to give citizens the opportunity for making use of ADUs as they choose to do so under the proper terms. So
So what was the motion under?
Motion.
Yeah, I don't know what we're voting on.
Do we want to withdraw the motion and take some time to craft the language?
What are we taking time to do that?
So, I mean, okay, so look,
Nick wants to add language for 4. I'm not sure. Well,
I would like that
Should we-
for people in a family unit to be able to live in an accessory dwelling unit, because we are allowing people that own property in this city to live in accessory. This is the way this is written, right? You can be a single person or a couple and live in your ADU and rent out your main house. Families can't do that. Okay, that doesn't seem fair to me, but that's me. Additionally, families cannot, under this, rent an accessory dwelling unit, and I don't see any good reason for it. And that's why I'm fighting so hard on this, because we do not have David said it earlier, we have 2.5 square miles. The apartments on Spotswood and VDOT are not built yet. There are not a lot of places for people to live in the city. There's not a lot of places for people to live in the state. There's not a lot of places for people to live in this country. So I don't think that when we have a national, state, and local housing shortage, that we should be denying a whole class of people the ability to live in a safe environment, which is our great city of Lexington.
well, we have.
Is one person directing the city attorney or the city manager to rewrite this? Or should there be a collective will of council that we want to deviate from what's proposed to expand it to 4 or 3. Again, I threw out my hypothetical
Yeah.
for where I am. If we're going down the path of 4, are we rewriting the parking? Here we go. I mean, let's have a water meter and charge them the full amount now. Like, good God, it's a house. Let's not let this was an accessory dwelling unit. I threw out the hypothetical of two adults that happen to expand by 1, where we would be. Now we're at 4.
Well, can I ask you a
And-
question? What's wrong with 2 people for a 1-bedroom accessory dwelling unit and 4 people?
Well,
for-
because
for-
you're potentially talking about 4 adults. And
If you
and
look
so
at,
that's
okay,
where I
so
get-
if you look at this definition
get
of permit,
uncomfortable about
if you look at.
But
this-
let me,
about the parking.
let me interject and try and address your question, Mr. Ziegler. I think that Mr. Betts wants to offer some language for council to consider. I respect his opinion and desire to do that. And want to offer that latitude for him to work through the question, for instance, that you asked. If it's a 1-bedroom, 4 people would be against the law for Virginia Housing Code. So I don't think Mr. Betts has fully vetted it from that standpoint. The motion on the table, and perhaps we should just move forward with that, is to change the definition, not more than 4 related persons. And that was to change the language in this, not the ordinance, just those 2 lines. There's a
And
motion.
what I
second.
would say to Mr. Sigler's point and to that language is add the additional 4 unrelated persons in a 2-bedroom accessory dwelling unit and no more than 2 or no more than 2 related people and just 2 related people per bedroom.
What about the parking?
And this is, I'm worried about the language and trying to formulate it
So
here.
what I'm trying to say is excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just for 1 second. What I'm trying to say is the familiar status talks about people under the age of 18. And so like if there's some time to change this, we can craft this. I want to make sure, as Council Member Alexander said, that we get this right, that we don't get ourselves sued, that we don't get our citizens sued. So I know other localities have done some other things and and there's been some research on this. Localities get sued all the time. Just because localities do something doesn't mean it's legal.
Nick, our city attorney has vetted it.
I'm gonna.
I would, yeah. Remember,
I
our
have a
city
different-
attorney but I would like to get back to, are we really considering 4 people? And if we are, then we can deal with the parking and everything else. But I would like to hear that. Are we prepared to at least answer that? Because there's no point in Nick going through all this trouble
Sure.
if he's the only one who's interested
Well,
in
I am for
4 people.
I am for families with up to 2 children being able to live there. Does anybody share my opinion?
Sure. And I think what we're talking about is 2 people per bedroom. That's where this thing is coming. If it's a 1-bedroom unit, then it's 2 people. If it's a 2-bedroom unit, then it's 2 times 2. It's 4. That's where the 4 is coming from.
Yes. I agree with that is the building code. It doesn't mean we have to require that if you have 2 bedrooms, you can have up to 4 people. That's just the building code. What we're saying, what Planning Commission was saying was this is an accessory dwelling unit. It is meant to be subordinate to the main structure, and it's not meant to house as many people as the main structure.
Why are you
And
opposed
so
to families living there though? Can you explain that?
it's because it changes the character of the neighborhood and the density of the neighborhood.
Okay,
There's
so
a lot of activity when you have two houses. of
isn't there a lot of
4.
activity? Isn't there a lot of activity when you have people coming in every weekend for a short-term rental? Doesn't that change?
That's why we limit it to 45 days a year.
But
for
so
residential
tell me why it's okay to change the character of the neighborhood every weekend, but it's not okay to change the character of the neighborhood, like
Because
the other
we
days.
felt like that we set limits within short-term rental to keep it from changing the character of the neighborhood, from preventing it from changing
Just
that.
had a gentleman up here that said that it has changed the character of his neighborhood. So my point is the character of neighborhoods changes all the time. And so I don't want to exclude or potentially discriminate against families just because it changed the character of the neighborhood, because characters in the neighborhood change every single year.
Well, and in an effort to try and move us forward, Mr. Alligood, you indicated 2-bedroom would be 4 people,
2 per bedroom, yes.
2 per bedroom.
Yes.
A problem with that is if you have a 2 husband or man and woman in 1 bedroom and a man and woman in another bedroom, you've met the 4, which is perhaps your intention. If they procreate, you've got the problem, Mr. Ziegler's, you're going to be kicking people out. So I don't think that the challenge I think that we have tonight and moving forward, we can, I guess, I'm struggling with my Robert's rules, so I may look to the attorney. We have a motion and a second, and it is set, and it does have flaws. And
Can I amend my motion?
You can withdraw it or amend. I mean,
I would amend my motion. So let me get the exact code. I would like to take time to look at this because now there have been other council members that have expressed an interest. We have 3 council members that have expressed an interest in amending this, which is half of council.
Right.
And so if we want to sit here and craft this tonight, I am happy to do that. But I'm also happy to take wait till our next meeting, get the language together and have something that everybody can put their eyes on. So I'm happy to do either one. And that's what I would like to know from everybody's standpoint, what is the best thing to do in that nature.
First of all, I would say I would not want to make a decision tonight
I agree.
based on how this is all over the place. And I think that our thoughts are all over the place. And another thing I was thinking about, has this come up for ADU because we want more short-term rentals, or do we want to have opportunities for couples and families to have a place to live, that want to live here permanently? That's a philosophical question.
Yeah, are we expanding the short-term rental base? Or are we expanding the housing base? What's the preference overall to have that happen? I would suggest that expanding the housing base has longer-term preferred implications for the city.
But we also need to remember that one of the reasons that we went down this path was twofold: expand the housing options and provide the person living in the main structure the ability to potentially have extra income so they could stay in their house. And we know of folks in the city of Lexington that are currently attempting to develop an ADU to have extra income so they can continue living in their house.
But families wouldn't have the same potential for the extra income that single individuals or couples would have under this ordinance, because they couldn't rent out their larger structure if they wanted to. If you had a 2 parents and a kid, and they're like, well, these are hard economic times, we'll just live in our accessory dwelling unit, rent out the larger unit because one of the people lost a job or something, then they can't do that under what's here. So what I'm saying is fair is fair. So if we're going to let, a certain group of people do something, I don't understand why we wouldn't, within reason, let another group of people do something.
We can debate this as long as y'all would like. I'm not sure that we're making any progress or firming up any of the details. It's certainly a straw poll that there are 3 people that would like to see the concept perhaps further vetted for 4 people. And if there are 3 against, that would make it a tiebreaker for me. And I would suggest, and out of respect to Mr. Betts, give him the opportunity to review what he's looking to accomplish and then come back with a reasonable recommendation, preferably distributed to council prior to our meeting, so it can be reviewed and understood by everyone when we meet here at a future meeting, whether it be the 15th or sometime beyond that.
So can we keep the public hearing open then and continue it to the next meeting?
I think I've already closed the public hearing, but be glad to open it or have another public hearing if that would be council's desire.
can we open it and not have to necessarily advertise, just to save a lot?
Well, let me,
You could reopen it. I mean, you've had your
I'm-
public hearing that is required
right.
for the zoning ordinance amendment. So you can
Oh.
communicate to the individuals here that you're
Yeah.
gonna have an additional public hearing and
Or for the purposes of everyone here tonight to stay tuned and be a little bit of a cliffhanger, I'm going to reopen this public hearing and carry it to our next meeting. If that, unless there's an objection from council. Hearing no objection, I will ask Mr. Betts, you had offered to withdraw your motion,
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Alligood, you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
So the motion is withdrawn. Expectation is that Mr. Betts will work on some language modification to this ordinance and distribute to council prior to when this is next on the agenda, and we will keep the public hearing open.
Yes, sir. Would you like me to send it to you for your just to distribute to council, or would you like me to?
Happy for you, once you get squared away with staff on the language, to distribute it to council, be fine, or staff can.
And
do it
I
for you.
can, and I'm able to work with the city manager and city attorney on this.
I'd ask you to work with the,
City manager.
with Arnie and city manager. If they need the attorney's guidance and support, they can reach out and
Understood.
get it.
Understood.
Very good. We are,
Just a quick observation. We had a work session that went 2 hours and didn't really, and we ended up at the same place in there. And so this is an issue that's getting a lot of attention and discussion. And I think delaying it to come up with improved wording is justified at this. Thank you.
I would love to hear from the public as to how they feel about this before making a final decision as well.
well, Sam has shared his 2 cents worth, and I will look to move on to next item 7, consideration of minutes. Those were included in your packet. Unless there are any objections, we will approve those as presented. And citizens' remarks and comments. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to council on any other items? Hearing none, before we go on to boards and commissions, it is very close to 8:30, which is when we identify we hope to go into closed session. And I would like to let me look at the I would say for anyone who wants to hang around, we'd love for you to stay, and we will be taking action under my report for an appointment to ARB. But other than that, I'm not aware of any action that council will be taking, but I'm sure there'll be very informative reports regarding boards and commissions. And with that, unless there are any questions, guidance, or observations from council, I'll ask Ms. Alexander to read us into closed session. And while she's looking for the document to do so, Janie, are we able to get linked up? Yes, Sam. Sure.
Thank you. Sam Collins, 24 Edmondson. I understand the motion. Do I understand correctly that any impact that that motion would have on the existing conditions, such as offsets, driveways, those types of things, would also have to be amended as part of that reconsideration?
that could be amended.
Could,
I don't know that I'd go with would have to be amended, but it's just something.
so
that we'll have
to
to work
your,
on.
I'm just proposing,
Yeah.
if you're doubling the size of people,
I think that was the-
again, that's my infrastructure issue.
right.
I don't want to lead here thinking that the rest of the considerations that were acceptable for individuals for a given number
Yeah.
are not going to be readdressed, given that increase in.
I'm not speaking for anyone but myself, but my perception of the intended outcome is that if there is a 2-bedroom unit, that it would provide for a man, for a couple and perhaps children up to 4. Presumably, children are under 18, may or may not be driving, and so may not carry that additional requirement. That's up to council to decide, but obviously if you have a 16-year-old that's driving, Mr. Hallis.
You have to look at the worst case.
Correct.
You can't assume,
Certainly.
you can't
Certainly.
assume it's not gonna happen.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, staff will make sure that whatever language comes from Councilmember Betts will meet the city code currently in place, whether it's parking setbacks, whatever. So we'll make sure we point that out, what those changes would require
Understand,
if such changes were brought forward.
understand. Thank you for your time. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no.
One
Thank,
other-
thank you for participating and sharing your perspective and
One modification to something addressed momentarily. If we increase the intensity, we might actually have to re-advertise for another public hearing. So if we do increase the number of people, we probably will have to re-advertise for a second public hearing.
Increasing the intensity.
I move that Lexington City Council convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1 for the purpose of discussing and considering candidates for the position of city manager. I need a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. And this requires a roll call vote. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Sigler,
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Sally Good.
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Aye.
And I vote aye. We are ready to go into closed meeting.
I could